SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is a very weird game, and over the last 20 years of playing this game way more than the average human should, as well as developing all sorts of different mods, I've learned a lot of completely useless fun facts and trivia, most of which you might not know about. So let's not waste any time and get right to the details. Here's 50 obscure facts about SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. In Sandy's Tree Dome, Sandy tasks you with cleaning out the rampaging robots. Once you begin the fight, you won't be able to talk to her again until all the robots have been defeated. Sandy has unique dialogue that goes completely unused because of this.
Don't even think of speaking to me until you got my house sorted out right.
In SpongeBob's Pineapple, you can actually bubble bowl the stove for this to happen. This building in downtown Rooftops is completely missing its back collision. Yeah, good luck not seeing that now. Having trouble with Prawn? Did you know, if you jump over his ring attack, he'll actually stop using it sooner. You'll have to jump over it multiple times in later phases, but you'll be able to end the fight much quicker. You may have noticed, whenever you land SpongeBob's Bubble Bounce, sometimes it will land with a and other times it'll land with a. This is because the pop animation only plays when you land on an object not baked into the main level model, such as this rocket or this platform. Makes sense, right? Though, you may be surprised at what is an object and what isn't. For example, yep, the entire Krusty Krab found at Bikini Bottom is an asset, despite all the other main buildings here being baked into the level model. You know what's even more bizarre? This is not the case for the exact replica of it found in SpongeBob's dream. Very strange. If you die at any point in the third phase of the Robo-Sandy fight, the fallen scoreboard will actually fix itself. Neat! If you try to stun the Monsoon in Kelp Caves using Patrick's slam attack, the game will actually crash due to a missing animation. In the Robo-Patrick battle, if you immediately skip the cutscene starting the third phase, Robo-Patrick will use his spit attack on SpongeBob. Of the 9 major levels, SpongeBob's Dream is the only one without a bungee jump. The waterfall in Jellyfish Cave flows out of a jellyfish-shaped hole in the wall. The 100% cutscene in the Krusty Krab plays in a special Krusty Krab replica present in the SpongeBob arena. You can actually see this replica in-game by positioning yourself right and staring through some transparent textures. This specific springboard in Goo Lagoon Pier will actually launch you higher if you use SpongeBob's Bubble Bounce on it. This is a remnant of a scrap mechanic in which springboards will give you more height if you bubble bounce on them. Speaking of, in downtown Rooftops, there is a fully functional sign within the collision of the lighthouse. The sign tells you how you can use SpongeBob's Bubble Bounce to bounce higher on springboards. This was likely moved out of bounds since the mechanic was ultimately scrapped. Battle for Bikini Bottom handles SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy's playability in a very interesting way. SpongeBob is playable in every single area of the game, while Patrick and Sandy are only playable in specific areas. This is because Patrick and Sandy's assets are stored separately from SpongeBob's. SpongeBob's assets are stored in a global file that is loaded at all times. However, the assets for Patrick and Sandy are stored in individual areas. For example, the asset file for Jellyfish Cave contains Patrick assets, and the asset file for Industrial Park contains Sandy assets. Because of this, if you try entering a level as Patrick or Sandy, but their assets don't exist in the level you are entering, the game will automatically switch you back to SpongeBob. This is mostly consistent for areas where you can't enter as either of the secondary characters, such as Bikini Bottom, but there is one interesting exception. You can enter the first area of the Mermalair as Patrick, despite there being literally nothing for him to do there. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy don't even have dialogue programmed with Patrick here. Even more bizarre considering you can exit back to Shady Shoals from here, being the only instance where you can enter Bikini Bottom as someone other than SpongeBob. You can still only play as SpongeBob here, but it's still worth noting. This statue exists in downtown streets. However, if you look at it from the Sea Needle, it looks like some sort of open tuna can? Despite being referred to as Kelp Forest in-game, the first area of Kelp Forest is internally referred to as Kelp Forest Outskirts. Due to an oversight, there are 2 red shiny objects stacked on top of each other in Jellyfish Lake. The model for these platforms inside Robot SpongeBob is missing a polygon. Each of the tasks in the pause menu are ordered based on which area they can be found in. The first 4 tasks in Rock Bottom, for example, all pertain to tasks found in the first area, downtown Rock Bottom. However, despite all other levels following this listing scheme, there is one exception. The first area of SpongeBob's Dream has 3 golden spatulas, Across the Dreamscape, Follow the Bouncing Ball, and Super Bounce. The first 2 tasks are listed first and second, but bizarrely, Super Bounce is listed as the 7th task, rather than the 3rd, placing it in between Krabby Patty platforms in Mr. Krabs' Dream, and Here You Go in Patrick's Dream. I think it's safe to assume the reason why this is likely because the 7th task was originally Screaming for Ice Cream, the golden spatula found in the original scrapped Patrick's Dream, before being reworked into Super Bounce. Heavy Iron then forgot to put Super Bounce in the correct task order. Oh well. You can hit SpongeBob SquarePants shelves in SpongeBob's closet. Throughout the entire game, Sandy and Mermaid Man never share a conversation with each other, making Mermaid Man the only reoccurring NPC to not share a conversation with all 3 playable characters. 3 different music tracks can play in the Wakatiki minigame. There is a purple shiny object inside this flower in Sandy's dream. The sunscreen stealing hammer in Goo Lagoon Beach can be destroyed using the cruise bubble, which will complete Larry's task as normal. No lifeguard towers required. In Jellyfish Lake, there is a unique conversation between SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs if SpongeBob is the first to enter the area. In casual gameplay, it is impossible to enter for the first time with anyone other than Patrick, so players won't witness this exchange.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! Squidward tells me you're looking for the King Jellyfish.
Yes, sir, Mr. Krabs.
Good thing, too. That monster has been stinging all my good customers in their poop decks. I hear that you can find him up top of Old Sport Mountain here. Go hook that beast, sailor!
Aye, Mr. Krabs!
Interestingly, based on the wording in the 2 different conversations, it would seem this was designed for SpongeBob specifically, before Heavy Iron realized this conversation would be impossible to witness. Thus, the voice lines were reworked for a Patrick conversation. Don't believe me? This line for Patrick is recycled from Kelp Swamp.
Oh boy, Mr. Krabs. I'll see what I can do. Oh boy, Mr. Krabs. I'll see what I can do.
The dialogue from the fish announcer that appears on the side of the screen in the Poseidon is accurate to whenever the fish announcer talks at his desk. Slick's introduction cutscene in Graveyard Lake won't play if the Slick has been defeated. In the first area of Kelp Forest, pressing this button will play a cutscene showing the growing kelp stock, which halts movement. However, the very next button does the exact same thing, but does not halt movement, despite assets existing in the files, such as camera angles, to allow for a similar cutscene to play. Every single main explorable area has at least 1 purple shiny object to find, except for Downtown Streets, which has 2. With the exception of the first clam in Jellyfish Rock and the dream clams in SpongeBob's Dream, each of the main clam tolls scales by 100 shiny objects with each main level. Starting at 2,000 in Jellyfish Fields, this increases to 2,100 in Downtown Bikini Bottom, 2,200 in Goo Lagoon, 2,300 in the Mermalair, 2,400 in Rock Bottom, 2,500 in Sand Mountain, 2,600 in Kelp Forest, 2,700 in the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, and 2,800 in SpongeBob's Dream. In Guppy Mound, starting Mrs. Puff's time trial will play the music for Downtown Bikini Bottom at the start of the slide rather than the original slide theme. The reason reason why this is actually really funny. Whenever the game plays music for a certain event, such as slides or ambushes, it runs a command with a certain numbered argument. For slides, it runs this command with argument 15, which corresponds to the slide theme. However, in this specific case in Guppy Mount, it runs argument 2, which links to the downtown Bikini Bottom theme. I honestly have no idea how this happened. Every single floating island in Sandy's dream is shaped like Texas. There is an arrow seemingly lodged into this building in downtown Rooftops. In specifically the GameCube version of the game, this umbrella texture is bugged, causing the bamboo pole and flowers to appear transparent in-game. Since this texture is recycled for these poles in Rock Bottom Museum, the same thing happens there too. This is what these should look like. You can hit these pipe things in the Murmur for shiny objects. Sandy has a very subtle idle animation in which her tail moves up and down rather than left and right. As we all know, on the Dutchman's ship, activating all of the Dutchman's cannons will cause the task's golden spatula to appear and the chest with the cannon's launch button to open. After destroying the robot cannons, you'll be able to launch the cannons, destroy the robot ship, and activate the cutscene to fight the Flying Dutchman. What you might not know is there is a massive oversight here. If you launch the cannons before destroying the robot cannons, a cutscene will play showing the robot cannons destroying the incoming cannonballs. However, since you have already pressed the button to launch the cannons, the task to defeat the Flying Dutchman will become available in the pause menu regardless, which you can just warp to go right to the arena like normal, meaning you don't need to destroy the robot cannons to complete the task. Isn't that something? The model for Robo-SpongeBob used in the first phase of the final boss oddly features conveyor belts on the inside of his head, despite no conveyor belts actually showing up in the second phase. Out of bounds in Sandy's Tree Dome is a seemingly much earlier version of Goo Lagoon, one with a much more simplified Goo Lagoon pier. When you have enough shiny objects to enter the theater, but don't open it in the first text box, the box office guy has a random chance to speak 2 different voice lines.
What would you like to see today, sir? May I help you?
This is the only conversation in the entire game to be like this. Patrick can't talk to the Murmur computer. Using Sandy's hover in this specific area of the Rock Bottom Museum will cause Hans to grab you. This cannon button, despite seeming like it must be activated by a bubble bounce, can be pressed with a regular bubble spin. All of the individual areas in the game are categorized by 2 letters followed by the area number. The first area of Jellyfish Fields is named JF01 internally, while the third area of Rock Bottom is named RB03 internally. Makes sense, right? Well, a very interesting observation can be made because of this. Let's take a look at how the Kelp Forest areas are named internally. The first area is named KF01, Kelp Swamp is KF02, Kelp Caves is KF04, and Kelp Vines is KF05. That's strange. Where's KF03? Was it a scrapped area between Kelp Swamp and Kelp Caves? Or perhaps it was a Heavy Iron intern that titled the Kelp Caves files incorrectly. We may never know for sure. This button at the Goo Lagoon Beach has its collision active at all times, regardless of whether or not you've paid the toll clam or not. Meaning, with the right positioning, you can activate the Dragons Challenge without spending any shiny objects. Rolling the giant boulder and sand mountain down the slope a second time will cause it to travel for slightly longer down the avalanche path. This conversation between Sandy and Mrs. Puff in downtown streets accidentally has Mrs. Puff speaking Sandy's line.
Well, if it isn't Sandy Cheeks.
Howdy, Mrs. Puff. Howdy, Mrs. Puff.
Downtown Rock Bottom and the Trench of Advanced Darkness were seemingly modeled together, as loading both of them at the same time in Industrial Park has the 2 of them line up together almost perfectly. If you punch in a cheat code, doesn't matter what code it is, every NPC will face away from you from now on, as if publicly shunning you for cheating in a children's game. And finally, the Krusty Krab is completely missing in the intro cutscene. Phew! Now that's a lot of obscure facts, a surplus of obscurity, but that's all I've got for today. What was your favorite fact? Learn something new or have more obscure trivia to share? Comment below! Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more Battle for Bikini Bottom content. See you all next time!